Welcome to the Bend Don't Break podcast. We are powered by the Source Weekly, Bend's locally owned newspaper. This podcast is our eddy in the rushing waters of local journalism. We are glad that you're taking some of your time to listen to us chat with the people who shape our local community.
Thank you to our presenting sponsor, RE/MAX Key Properties, a family-owned full-service real estate brokerage specializing in residential, luxury, commercial, new construction, and ranch and land properties. Their new state-of-the-art facility at 42 Greenwood Avenue is a modern, collaborative space and the new home of the Bend Don't Break podcast recording studio.
I'm Aaron Switzer, publisher of the Source Weekly and host of the Bend Don't Break podcast. Today with us is Emily Kirk. She is born and raised Oregonian whose passion for people and community led her to local television news. She's been a familiar face on TV in Central Oregon since 2014 and loves to take advantage of all the region has to offer. She joined the Central Oregon Daily News team in December of 2020 after working for the City of Bend in communications. Prior to that, Emily spent several years as an on-air personality and journalist in Bend. Outside of work, you'll find her spending time near a body of water, likely with her golden retriever, Jerry, and boyfriend, who she met while working for Bend Parks and Rec, eating at one of our many amazing food establishments, listening to live music. She grew up in the Portland area playing sports, was voted class clown, and is a University of Oregon graduate. Emily is part of the Good Morning Central Oregon team and hosts their weekly food segment called Taste This and adventure segment called Get Outside. You can find Emily on social media or email her at ekirk@centraloregondaily.com.
We covered a lot of ground. Yeah.
There we go. Emily, well done.
My bio on TV, I like to make sure people know what's up all over the place.
How did, what brought you to Central Oregon?
A desire to move east of the Cascades, mainly. I say the weather. Yeah. And ironically,
you don't want to bash Portland's rain.
No.
Do you feel comfortable doing that? I do.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I mean, the problem was, so I went to Portland last weekend to go visit my family. A cousin got married. All my family's still in Portland. Yeah. So I go and it's like, one of the first weekends in October, the drive from here to Mount Hood, the colors are beautiful. The leaves are all changing. I was like, oh my God, I love the valley this time of year. It's just so beautiful. And then I'm like, remember it rains 9 months a year. Remember it rains.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. No. So really the weather, I grew up coming here. We came 2 weeks every summer and every winter. Okay. I learned to ski.
Were you a Sun River kind of like family?
South of Sun River, actually. Okay. We'd stay in Oregon Water Wonderland 2. Oh. Our neighbor in Portland had a house on the river. Okay. Or a cabin, I should say. Yeah. And we just grew up coming here. I love Central Oregon. And then, working in local TV news, you got to start in small markets. So for me, it was like, I didn't really want to leave Oregon. I had an internship at KZI in Eugene. And then after that, they're like, do you want to work here? And I was like, I think I want to move where it's a little bit sunnier. I was like, thank you for that.
Right.
But,
yeah. I always have that moment in the spring when I go to the valley and they're ahead and you're coming from here and it's freezing and it's been gray and you're totally pale and miserable. And you get over there and there's cherry blossoms and I'm like, I should move here. This is lovely.
You get those like random couple of days in Portland in June. Yeah, the cherry blossoms are going off. It's like Rose Festival time of year. And you're like, I could live in Portland. I could live somewhere in the valley. Yeah, and the produce, I miss that. Yeah. It's like my dad still has tons of tomatoes, right now in his yard. Yeah. I was like, we attempted to grow tomatoes several years ago and just stopped doing it because you get like 3 cherry tomatoes. Yeah.
That's what happened to me this year. I lost them all in August. Yeah. They all went down.
It happens quick. Yeah. I mean, our growing season's just so short. So I miss the produce.
Yeah. You, where did you get your start when you came over?
At News Channel 21. Okay. So I started there in 2014. And I had been working for Comcast Sportsnet Northwest. Yep. And so they do Ducks, Beavers, Blazers, Timbers. And at the time, the Blazers were in the playoffs. Oh. This was 2014. Yeah. And so I had interviewed at News Channel 21, I think in March. And then I didn't get a phone call until early May. And at that point, it was like, well, I got to wait until the Blazers are done, which I think they lost like 2 weeks later. So then it was like, okay, now I can move on. So I moved here Memorial Day weekend of 2014.
Okay. Yeah. And started doing that.
Yeah. I started working late nights, producing the 10 and 11 o'clock news for them, which was super fun. I've always had a non-traditional work schedule. So to me, it kind of wasn't a big deal. Like I'd been working at a bar and a restaurant part-time in Eugene and in Portland. Since sliding over there and working until 12:30 at night wasn't that big of a deal.
Right. Yeah.
But it was fun. I mean, you learn so much so fast. It was like the first couple weeks, I mean, my head just felt like mush.
Right.
You're just absorbing so much and you're learning so much. And it really is in news. It's kind of like, throw you into the fire.
Right.
Like you get it in the media sense.
Oh, yeah.
Like you're just like, okay, go out and do it now.
Yeah.
And
There's
you'll eventually learn.
People are like, what is your onboarding process? And I said, well, you sit in the chair and you start, and then we tell you how it's going. If,
Yeah. Right. And it's a blessing, at News Channel 21, it was, you learn everything if you want to too. It's like, if you just want to be a producer, you can just be a producer. If you want to learn to report, you can do that. If you learn to anchor, it's nice because people take vacation. You got to have people fill in. And it's nice.
Well, that's the thing about small media, right? I mean, you end up wearing so many hats, and in some ways it's a glass half full, glass half empty. You can look at it like, oh my gosh, I'm going crazy. I'm doing all this stuff, but you learn it all.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. At one point my schedule was, I worked Friday evenings and I did this for a couple seasons, the like Friday Night Light football show. So I did sports on Fridays, and then on Saturdays and Sundays I did the weekend weather. Mondays I did sports because our sports guy was out like in studio or would go to a game or two. And then Tuesdays I was a dayside reporter. Yeah. So I did news, weather, and sports in one schedule, like, just for a week of work.
Right.
So that was kind of funny. But I don't know. I firmly believe in especially in media and in small markets, just like trying everything. Yeah. Because all of a sudden you love doing weather. I mean, that happens to a lot of people. Like sometimes like, oh, I could never do that. And they start doing it and they're like, this is pretty fun. Yeah. Or like, wow, I really like sitting at the desk and anchoring. Or like, there's some people who are like, do not put me on the anchor desk. I only want to report. Right. So everybody can kind of find what works for them.
Megan, who's in studio with us, we actually got her she does was the same way. Started with our calendar, moved over to marketing. That's been exciting little roller coaster ride. Same as kind of Emily.
You gotta like dive in head first.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's fun to kind of find out what even what you're good at too. Yes. You learn. You're kind of like, wow, I guess I am better at this than I thought I'd be, or well, I'm really not as good as that thing as I thought I would be, the other way too.
So my remembering, was that the time when you arrived at KTVZ when they redid the whole studio, they tore everything out and they brought everything new in, or did that happen? What was that?
There were some small changes when they got like it's called the like Duratrans is like the background to it. Yeah. That was there when I got there. They just redid their studio, which looks really nice. Yeah. And now it's kind of funny because it's like, I joke like I'm on the other team now because some people get confused. I mean, Z21's the legacy station; they've been here for forever. Central Oregon Daily News is, we're younger by quite a bit. When I first started here, and that was the thing. If you wanted to live and work in Bend, it's kind of like working in the hospital. If you want to do TV news in the state of Oregon, you only have 4 places you can live. That's Portland, Eugene, Medford, and here. Yeah. So if you want to live and work in Bend in TV news, like I got passed up for a job I had applied for originally. And, another gal got that job ahead of me. So I was like, gosh, I'm just kind of like waiting for a, job to line up and for them to say, come on over.
Yeah. Well, your face is your brand, Emily. Oh my gosh. It's people know Emily Kirk and the
first and last name.
Right.
Is what it is too. Or my first and last name is News Lady, which I'll take too. I used to be News Girl. Yeah. So I'm like, no, I've been here 10 years. I'd like to graduate to being lady.
I love that. Is that really a term of use? News lady.
Oh, yeah. With a finger point, usually. Okay. Loudly from across, a couple aisles at Costco. Yeah. Oh. I know her, or I know you. Yeah. And then yesterday, a guy I was at, we went and did a food segment in Sisters. And then I went to the Barn and Sisters. Have you been there? It's like that cool food cart. Yeah, it's great. And so afterwards, I was like, I'm going to like sit and have a beer. It's like, my happy hour is at like 2. Because I wake up at 3:30 in the morning.
Right.
So then I was sitting on the chair waiting to go into the bathroom. This guy comes out and he just like opens the door and he's like, Emily Kirk, I know you. And it's just like the whole thing. And one thing I was like, that must have been abrupt for you to come out of the bathroom and then have your news lady you see in the mornings staring at you waiting in line.
Yeah. And I remember, you won the best TV personality this year.
A really nice compliment.
Yeah, that's great.
I mean,
I know.
Bob had to retire.
Bob moved on, and it opened up that whole he dominated that category.
Oh yeah.
And that his face was his brand. He had his own little saying. You're going to have to develop, have a sparkling day. If you just keep repeating something all the time, then
people would always be like, what's your tagline or whatever? And I was like, I don't know. We'll be back after this. That's going to look at your weather. We'll be right back.
Right.
Yeah, no, his, what a phrase. What a guy. I mean, like when I came to News Channel 21, I didn't realize how many people, not just in Central Oregon, but just how many people in general watch the news. That kind of blew my mind.
Yeah.
And I've had friends who have moved on to other mid-sized markets or whatever, and even small markets too. And they're like, I don't get recognized anywhere. Now we're in their news place, but they're like, when I was in Bend, it was like everywhere because people are just so engaged, which is a huge compliment.
Yeah. And the town is, I say this to, we'll have journalists move over here. I think this is true for media in general, is that, I'll have people from Portland come over and they're used to just writing and riffing and they never hear from the people they're writing about. I'm like, you're going to see that person at coffee.
Oh,
like
for sure.
you better know, and they're going to come up. They're not going to be like, put their head down. They'll be, hey, saw what you wrote. Yeah. Liked it, hated it, wish you wouldn't have said that. And it's an eye opener for them because they're used to being in an ivory tower and they don't have that recognition and they're not living that life.
Yeah, they're not going to run into somebody at Safeway. Right. I had a woman one time at Mount Bachelor. I was coming down the stairs, clunking around in my ski boots, and I was with another friend who actually worked with me at KTVZ at the time. And this gal goes, "Oh, you're the news gals or whatever." And she goes, "I gotta tell you," and she squares to me and she's like, "That yellow dress you wear with the tank top, I don't understand why you wear that in March when it's cold and it's 60 degrees outside." I was just like, well, I only have so many dresses, but I mean, you do get confronted by viewers in public and in real life. And some of the things people say they can be unkind sometimes, or they can be the best, right?
Yeah.
I always say people are the worst and they're the best.
Yeah. How is it for you being the kind of personality you are where people know your face and name? I mean, we had Chris Arnold in here a couple of weeks ago and she, nobody knows her because she's on radio. They only know her voice and she's also very cautious about giving any information out about
I don't blame
her thing. But for you, where you have social media, I mean, what is that like? What is that? That's got to, I know we make light of it, but it's a burden for sure.
Yeah. And it can be, I can be nervous about it for security reasons too. Right. I'm really conscious about not posting things that have anything that like identifies where I live or, but I do want to pull that curtain a little bit for people because I live here too. I'm a community member and I want to be relatable. And I'm also just lazy. I don't want to create 2 Instagram pages. So I'm just like, well, what you guys know is the same thing my Uncle Bob knows,
That's incredible.
Yeah. But something actually very creepy I saw was a friend who had posted a thing about her dog and her dog's collar was in the picture. And someone found her phone number based on her dog's collar. Whoa. It's like things you don't think about, but here was and so sometimes that was social media. That made me think a lot. I was like, okay, I'm not 100% an open book, but I'm also not an entirely closed book. And I respect either people either way. Yeah. You do you on social media. But I think my main goal is to share what I love about Central Oregon, share things about Central Oregon Daily. I think that's how people connect now is via social media. And so then they see, oh, cool. Like I went hiking on Tuesday with Megan, my co-anchor, and I post on our Facebook and I post some Instagram videos that are just like silly behind the scenes ones that they might not see an angle of from the TV.
Right.
So I like that part of it too. And it helps me connect with viewers. Yeah. Some people I've had to block. Other people are just friendly enough, that it's nice.
But you're operating that off your personal Instagram page.
Yeah. And I have a professional Facebook page and a personal Facebook page. Yeah. But my professional one I've built up quite a bit, and I enjoy interacting with people on that. And I like sharing little tidbits about my life and what I do too.
Well, I think that's great.
Yeah. I feel like I found a really good balance. Yeah. And I like social media. Like if I wasn't doing it, I did do social media for work at the City of Bend. Okay. When I was in between News Channel 21 and going to CO Daily, that's what I did. And I do enjoy it to an extent.
How was that working at the city?
It was fantastic. I really enjoyed working for the city. I I really value public service and that communications and that's transparency. And we had a great team. It was interesting though for me. I mean, so I came from working in a news station for 5.5 years.
Yeah, you're on the other side of the line.
Yeah, and exactly. Well, which has its benefits, its curses too, where you're kind of like, well, I know what they're going to ask you about, but in that breath, there was at the city. My boss at the time, she was a former Ben Bulletin reporter.
Right.
So she understands, that media relationship too, which is pretty natural actually for people who were in media is to go into communications roles after that.
Well, someone who's worked for the Bulletin has primarily been in that spot till very recently, I think.
Right. Yeah. And so, and it makes sense too, where it's like, I've always thought like, if I didn't do TV, I think that communications would be a good role for me. And for me, it was like that desire for like public service. I do see a very important role the government plays. And then I think that that social media is that, again, that kind of curtain you're pulling back.
Sure.
Or it's a line of communication, which, you got to meet people where they are. They're on their phones.
Right.
Right. So when I understand that now is like when people are watching TV, I forget, it's a really high percentage. They have their phone in their hand or they're actively on their phone while they're watching TV.
Right.
So it's like you have to meet people on their phone at that.
Well, you can be coming through on both sides.
Yeah.
You come through their phone and you're talking to them about the news.
Yes, which is kind of a marketing eye too. And so I think that news really builds your skills for a multitude of things. I mean, just even having to juggle so many things in a day, date deadlines. My gosh, it's like you have a deadline every single day.
Right.
You know how to just chat with people a bit more. So those skills I was able to use at the city of Bend, I think, quite a bit. But for me, it was interesting. So I started there in December of 2019.
Oh, wow.
So my role was the communications coordinator. So it was more like social media and kind of outward facing communication. And then I had this whole work plan about what I was going to do in my first year. And I really enjoyed that structure. And then all of a sudden, COVID happens.
Right.
And I get pulled to do a million things. And I've been working for government during
I felt
pandemic.
Terrible for those folks because they were it was daily change of schedule, change of regulation. There was no playbook.
Yeah.
You didn't know what people were going to ask you was coming, and you were waiting eagerly. Remember how we all were around the governor's pressers, like, what's going to happen?
In OHA, right. So, and that really... I learned a lot.
I didn't
about
realize you were with the city during that period.
Yeah, which was really bizarre for me personally, just as my human being, and going from a job where I work from 3:30 in the afternoon to midnight to then going 9 to 5, which I had never done before. So that was very foreign to me, and going down to City Hall, and and then all of a sudden going home. And being in my spare bedroom with my Coleman table and some weird computer setup I had, done. It was, it was it was kind of a mind warp for me a little bit. I was like, wow, just 6 months ago, you were in a news station. Now you're in your guest room and had a new job.
How long were you there?
Almost exactly a year.
Yeah.
So that's a common misconception. I think people are like, oh, you had to wait for your non-compete in your contract. I've received that several times, which is not.
I'm glad you addressed that. I hadn't thought of that, but that would be where the mind would go.
It's it's almost exactly a year. So I totally get it. I was like, yeah, duh, that makes complete sense. But no, at the time when I left, I think I was just, I wanted a break. I think I was just done with working in local news for the time being, but I wanted to live in Bend.
Right.
It was a great opportunity at the city. I was really interested in moving into communications, so I thought that would be natural, and it really was, and it was great, and the people there were wonderful. And then Central Oregon Daily News, I had multiple friends over there and old coworkers, and they're like, hey, we're looking for somebody.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, right during 2020. So you were making a wise move, I think, to get out of city communications. I can't even imagine because it went on for years.
Those people who work at the city are so talented in a number of ways. And I don't know if my mind was necessarily that way or
my
if it was
mind
just
would have been flee.
Yeah.
I can tell you, I would have been another edict through government. I mean, because everything was coming through those government offices and filtering to the city, and the city was kind of in a position where they could do some stuff, but not a lot. They're mostly just repeating.
Yes.
And
following guidelines that were passed down from the state. So it's like you're in a weird...
Yeah, the previous evening.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like you're just kind of in a weird position. And I say that, being on TV news, I get critics all the time about whatever. I had this guy rip apart my food segment a couple weeks ago. And I am one who will crack my knuckles over a keyboard to be like, you need to pipe down. This is the internet. Be nice, please.
Yeah, right.
But at the city, you can't do that.
Right.
I can block somebody on my personal Facebook page all day long. They say one thing that bothers me, or I think is rude to someone else, or is, disparaging against a group or whatever it is. And I'm like, block, because it's my page and I own it.
Right.
But the city's page or any government entity is owned by the taxpayers, essentially.
Right.
So they've got to do, X, Y, Z. The lawyer's got to say, yep, they violated the policies of our social media.
Right.
And so that's tough. So I say people, like, doing government communications was harder than doing news communications for me personally.
Oh, I can imagine. And especially during that time.
People are something else.
Yeah.
But I love people.
So now you are at Central Oregon Daily. You got these two great segments. Maybe talk a little bit why go into food.
Yeah.
Taste this.
They asked me to.
Yeah.
So the thing about Taste This, because we have 5 segments a week. Now we do. When I first got there, we had 4, and then this Get Outside one, which is once a month. So on Mondays, there's war stories, and that one's, people love war stories. And I mean, see why. They're just really thoughtful, longer form stories about veterans, and they have old pictures, and they interview these people who have gone through so much, and there are community members. At the end of the day, like, these are people who live in Central Oregon. And I think that that's one of Central Oregon Daily's strong suits, is that we do such a conscious job of telling stories of community members.
Right.
And you don't find that everywhere in the country. And then there's the food segment that I do is called Taste This. That airs on Tuesdays. Wednesdays, we have The Great Outdoors. Thursdays is Destination Oregon. And on Fridays is one called Little Did I Know. So the thing was always like, yeah, if you could do like a food segment, which one would you do? Just like, we'd all talk to each other.
Food segment would be tough.
So, well, I was like, well, I can't do Taste This because I don't eat red meat.
Yeah.
And so you'd imagine.
Right. I'm a vegetarian, and I have had to step into the food critic role. And it's always, you're going to a restaurant, and their strong suit might not be the vegetarian option.
Right. And more often than not, it's not.
Right.
And so I will say I've taken bites. I think I've realized for me it's a texture thing with meat. I grew up in a family that just didn't really eat red meat. And so, the food segment, I was like, well, they'd never have me do that because I don't eat red meat. And then the gal before who was hosting it left, and she was hosting the Get Outside segment, which airs once a month. So then they're like, will you take those 2 over? Yeah. Which I'm having a lot of fun with it. The Taste This one I really enjoy because it's, I am a foodie. I mean, coming from Portland, I lived there until 2000, whatever it was, 13. And I feel like the food scene was like just starting, like when I was in high school, the food scene was like
people point to that as like the golden age for that food. It got very popular after it.
Right.
But during that time is when it was, undiscovered.
Yeah. I mean, they had like, Pok Pok open. I mean, it was just like Portland was a really fun time then for food. It is still, but I mean, and then it was kind of booming. So anyways, so I think that I've always kind of been a foodie. I'm really social. I enjoy like going out to eat and having drinks with people. Right. And so it's fun just meeting these owners and hearing why they do what they do and how they got there and the food they come up with and how they come up with that. Yeah. So I've been having
and you're getting great food.
Oh my gosh, great food.
Yeah.
Yeah, this morning we were discussing about, we went to this place called Brunchies and Sisters yesterday. Yeah. And this morning on TV, I was like, oh my gosh, the sandwich they had, it was so good. I was like, I have a pretty tough job. I have to like eat people's really good food and I get to talk about it.
Well, if it's like our website and social pages, it's also very hot. Like, I mean, a lot of people probably tuning in to Taste This over other segments.
Yes. And we've been told, which is a very nice compliment, that folks will get, we call it like a Taste This bump, like the next weekend. Yeah. So it airs on a Tuesday and then that Thursday, Friday. Yeah, you're going to see it. Well, and some people report back. They're like, oh my gosh, like your segment aired. And a lot of people came in saying they saw it. Yeah. Which is, I'm like, wow, people are watching. Yay. Like, that's good. I want to hear that.
And then the outside segment.
Yeah, that one is once a month, and it's more, so the Great Outdoors is one that Brooks Snavely hosts, and Brooks he's been around in Central Oregon for a very long time. Like, I think he wrote the book on fly fishing in Central Oregon. He does that, Gary Lewis.
Well, small fact about Brooks Snavely. Yes. He met his wife through the Source Weekly Personals.
No way.
To follow up on that with them.
Gosh, yeah. Ask him about that.
Brooke for a while. It's always funny because he'll cover me and I'll go, Aaron, thank you.
Guy, he's lovely. And I always had heard about him. So that's at Central Oregon Daily. There's a few folks who used to work at News Channel 21. Yeah. And so I had always heard about him, but never met him. He is lovely. He's such a nice man.
He was down at the Sun River scene at the time.
Yes. And he worked at Sun River for quite a while. Yeah. Yep. He, so his segment is the Great Outdoors, and it's a lot more outdoor educational based. And, a lot of fishing and wildlife and that sort of thing. And get outside is more activity based. And so that would be,
you going on a zip line or something like that.
Yeah, which we did. Yeah. That was a fun one at Bachelor. Sure. I've gone skydiving. I've done this paramotoring thing, which is super fun.
Very cool.
Yeah,
you skydove.
I did. I think that was my first one I did.
How was it?
It was fun. I'd been once before when I turned 20 in Malala with my dad. And then, so this was my second time, but it was out of Madras when they had this skydive group out there. And they actually told me when the eclipse happened in 2017, so at the Madras airport, I was there with News Channel 21. That was my assignment, which was way cool. So there's all these planes there out at the Madras airport. And, the eclipse was kind of in the morning. And so I get there at the crack of dawn. I was live on the morning show from the airport. And then we're getting closer to eclipse time, and all these planes are kind of, filing in or whatever. Yeah. And this huge plane comes in. It was one of the last ones. I mean, it was massive.
Wow.
And it lands, and everybody's kind of like, oh my God, who's that? Because here at Madras, NASA's there. Like, Madras is one of the hot spots to see the eclipse because of the weather. And
right.
So there was, thousands of people. And then the eclipse happens. It's all great. And then this plane kind of starts to leave. The big plane starts to turn around like, okay, eclipse is done. We're out of here. So we're like, oh my God, who is that? But then it was stalled, and all of a sudden these skydivers come and they land in the middle of the field, and then the plane leaves. So I'm at Madras doing the skydive thing, and I'm talking to him, and I'm like, yeah, last time I was here, this huge plane was here, and we didn't know who it was for the eclipse. And then these skydivers were there, and he was like, that was us skydiving. And he goes, and the guy in the plane was Jeff Bezos.
Wow.
This is what the guy at Skydive Awesome in Madras told me. So,
right.
But I was like, no way. But I was like, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Because it was such a, talk of the town.
In and out.
Yeah. But the skydivers, I don't think they're there anymore.
No, when I did it, it was in Sisters.
Oh yeah, right.
And I did it with those guys, and then they were at they were in Madras, then they were in Sisters. I don't know where they are now.
But what'd you think?
Man, I was good with the diving part, and then they started swinging me around.
Oh,
doing the trying to turn it into a roller coaster ride, amusement park ride. Oh, I was sick.
Oh no!
Very, very nauseous. But the experience of the diving, I was like, look, I'm loving the dive. I could sit up here in the parachute all day.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden we were bungee jumping, feeling, and I was like, I don't.
Oh, your stomach just leaves your body.
It was bad.
That's when I won't do forget outside. It's bungee jumping, which I've already done.
Yeah.
And I won't do it again. I had a really good time, but I was surprised with the bungee jumping thing. So I wasn't going to bed thinking about it. It was that next morning.
Oh.
It was for my birthday.
And they were like, we're going?
Yeah. No, I went.
Oh, you just decided.
Yeah, my boyfriend, he was like, okay, wear these things. I have a surprise for you, whatever. So we drive north, and he has a little lunch packed. And I'm like, oh, maybe we're going to Smith Rock. And we passed Smith Rock, and then I was like, oh, we're going bungee jumping. And he was like, no, you're going bungee jumping. So I don't know if I would have done it had I had the night before to think about it.
And when you did it, terrifying?
I forgot that you basically bounce twice.
Oh, yeah. So that's the part of it I don't like. It's I could do it once, but then as soon as it went up, I'd be like, I'm done.
Yeah.
And then you hit it again.
And then your arms and legs start flailing. I looked like a dork. They took the video. I was like, oh my gosh, that was not cool. But yeah, that's a really fun segment.
I think you're allowed not to be cool on the double bounce.
Yeah, right.
Not going down, but
I mean, the form looked terrible,
right.
The whole thing.
Yeah.
But I can say I did it.
Well, Emily, we are at the end of our time.
Oh, wow.
I know.
30
we're
minutes
pretty fast. I know. The quarter, what did you call it? The quarter?
Yeah, that was the quarter. Exactly. We have 4 quarters in the morning show.
Yeah. I learned something.
Hey.
I learned something today. Emily, where can, I know you're the most recognizable face in Centurion, but if people want to reach out to Emily Kirk, where do they go?
You can find me at Costco most days or the store. But no, I've social media. If you search me, I'm on there. Central Oregon Daily News has an app, which is really fun now.
Cool.
Our website's all refreshed and revamped. Yeah, we're doing a good job over there. I'm easy to get a hold of.
Cool. All right, this has been the Bend Don't Break podcast with Emily Kirk. Thank you for listening. If you like what you heard, then please become a member and support our podcast. Thank you very much. You've been listening to the Bend Don't Break podcast, powered by The Source Weekly. To read, hear, and see more of what we do, go to bensource.com.